To a person with knowledge of the situation, the players' union proposal would allegedly result in projected losses of $460 million over the lifetime of that agreement for WNBA teams.
According to a person with knowledge of the situation, the players' union proposal would allegedly result in projected losses of $460 million over the life of the agreement. That is the financial gap at the center of the current collective bargaining negotiations between the WNBA and the Players Association. Right now, the league and the union are locked in a tense economic standoff. Players have taken firm public positions. Ownership groups are signaling financial limits. And in the background, a new alternative league is positioning itself as another opportunity for elite talent. Beneath the surface of the public messaging is a difficult financial reality that rarely gets discussed in detail: the structure of the revenue itself. The rhetoric from union leadership has been direct. The message has essentially been that someone will have to give ground, and it will not be the players. That kind of language signals how firm both sides have become. This is no longer a routine negotiation cycle. It is a debate about the financial model of the league. To understand the tension, you have to examine what is being requested. The Players Association submitted a counter-proposal asking for 25% of the league's gross revenue in year one, escalating to roughly 27.5% over the life of the deal. They are also seeking a salary cap near $9.5 million per team, along with continued housing benefits for early career players. On the surface, 25% may not sound extreme compared to major men's leagues that operate closer to 50-50 basketball-related income splits, but the comparison is complicated. The WNBA has historically operated with narrow margins and, in many years, substantial losses, often supported financially by the NBA. The players are pointing to rising television ratings, sold-out arenas, merchandise growth, and new media attention as
you're calling out the WNBA owners to a standoff for these CBA negotiations. She's basically saying, hey, somebody's going to have to fold, and it ain't going to be us. This is the nasty rhetoric.
As evidence that the league has entered a new economic phase. From their perspective, the growth justifies a larger share of revenue now, not years down the road. Ownership groups, however, are looking at full operating costs, arena expenses, marketing budgets, front office staffing, travel upgrades, expansion costs, and projecting that the union's proposal would generate roughly $460 million in cumulative losses over the life of the agreement. That projection is at the heart of the dispute. Owners reportedly offered a structure tied to net profits instead of gross revenue. That proposal would have allocated a significant percentage of actual profits to players. The union rejected it, largely because net profits in many markets are minimal or non-existent. The players prefer a share of gross revenue, the top-line income before expenses are deducted. That distinction is critical. Gross revenue is larger and more predictable. Net profit depends on cost control and operational efficiency. The disagreement reflects fundamentally different views of risk. A major underlying factor in the revenue surge is the arrival of Caitlin Clark. Her entry into the league significantly boosted attendance, television exposure, and national visibility. There is broad acknowledgement that her presence accelerated growth at a pace the league had not previously experienced. The union appears to be leveraging that growth window to secure long-term financial gains for all players. Ownership, on the other hand, is cautious about locking into major guaranteed financial obligations based on what could be a short-term spike rather than a sustained multi-year trend. This is the core tension: sustainability versus acceleration. Into that debate stepped Mark Cuban, the former majority owner of the Dallas Mavericks. He pointed out a structural issue that complicates the entire model. Many top-tier women's college basketball players are currently earning more in NIL, name, image, and likeness, deals than they would on a standard WNBA rookie contract. In college, players can receive housing, travel benefits, sponsorship income, and institutional support funded by donor networks and
Here it says, according to a person with knowledge of the situation, the players' union proposal would allegedly result in projected losses of $460 million over the lifetime of that agreement for WNBA teams. And you remember, it was at a $700 million loss for the 30% or whatever.
Corporate partnerships. Upon entering the professional ranks, base salaries often drop significantly. Cuban argues that this disconnect is part of the structural problem. His proposed solution is to expand sponsorship-based compensation models at the professional level. Instead of relying solely on team payroll funded by league revenue, he suggests allowing franchises to directly broker third-party corporate sponsorship payments to players, similar to NIL structures, within a regulated framework. Critics argue that such a system could disrupt competitive balance, with larger markets attracting more sponsor dollars. Cuban's counterpoint is revenue sharing, pooling a percentage of sponsorship income and redistributing it league-wide, similar to how certain advertising revenues are shared in other leagues. The broader concept is to expand the financial ecosystem rather than fight over existing revenue. Meanwhile, the calendar adds urgency. The regular season is scheduled to begin in early May. Expansion processes, free agency, and draft logistics all depend on labor
trying to eat out of
stability.
Caitlin Clark's
A
pie. Let's
prolonged
be real
standoff
here.
complicates
Let's be
every
real here.
operational step.
Caitlin Clark served
The
this
players
dish
have
up on a
emphasized that they
platter for
want
you
to
guys
play
like it was
and view this
Thanksgiving,
as their
and all y'all
livelihood.
doing is messing up the
Ownership
food at
groups
this
have
point.
emphasized
Y'all
fiscal
messing up the food.
responsibility and long-term
A person with knowledge
sustainability.
of the situation
Both
told USA
sides argue
Today
they are
Sports
protecting the
there's a
future
sense
of
of
the league,
urgency from the
just
players
from
union,
different
according to the
angles.
person, as
If no
Collier mentioned, the
agreement is
desire
reached,
to play
a
in
lockout
2026
becomes possible,
remains, along
and
with
that would
securing a
stall momentum
transformational
at a
deal
moment when
where the
the league has
WNBA doesn't
unprecedented visibility.
negotiate against
This is not
themselves.
simply a debate about percentages. It is a debate about economic structure, growth sustainability, and risk tolerance. Is the union pushing for fair compensation in response to genuine growth, or are owners prioritizing caution over immediate reward? That depends on how one evaluates long-term projections versus short-term opportunity. What is clear is that the financial model is being tested in real time. The numbers must align for the league to move forward without disruption. Until they do, both sides remain locked in negotiation, and the outcome will shape the next era of women's professional basketball.
And this is where the conversation becomes even more layered, because the dispute is no longer just about percentages on paper. It is about how both sides interpret the trajectory of the league itself. For decades, the WNBA operated in a slow-growth environment. The business model was modest, controlled, and in many cases dependent on NBA backing. Expansion was cautious. Media rights deals were limited. Marketing budgets were conservative. The league survived, but it did not explode. Now, for the first time in its history, the WNBA is experiencing what looks and feels like a commercial breakthrough moment. National television networks are competing for broadcast slots. Corporate sponsors are entering at higher valuation tiers. Arena attendance in several markets has surged. Social media engagement metrics are...
The part is that no matter what the WNBA does with salaries, every star college player will take a pay cut to play in the WNBA. I ask a few athletic directors, what is the going rate for a star player on a power conference women's basketball team? And the rate is between $500K to $1.2 million. And you are always a free agent with the portal. You get your own room and board paid for, and you can get a good education if you work at it. It's all subsidized by donors and shared school revenues, which makes it more similar to Europe, where companies subsidize teams than to the WNBA. In the NBA, a team can't go to a sponsor and negotiate a direct payment deal for a player. Facts. In college, they are
dramatically higher than historical baselines. The union sees this as a tipping point. From the player's perspective, this is precisely when labor should push farthest. Historically, professional sports leagues generate the largest financial disparities when early growth periods benefit ownership far more than players. The Players Association likely does not want to repeat patterns seen in other leagues where athletes only received significant revenue shares after decades of profitability had already been established. In other words, they do not want to wait 10 or 15 years for proof of sustainability, while the league monetizes their current star power. But ownership groups are operating from a risk management lens. Revenue spikes are not the same as structural transformation. A one-year rating surge does not automatically guarantee multi-year media rights escalations. A single generational rookie does not necessarily equal permanent nationwide engagement. Corporate sponsorship contracts can fluctuate. Expansion costs are real. Travel upgrades, including charter flights, dramatically increase operating expenses. When you zoom out, the $460 million projected loss figure represents more than just accounting. It represents uncertainty tolerance. Owners are effectively saying, we cannot commit to this level of guaranteed expenditure unless we are confident the revenue base will remain elevated for multiple years. That creates a philosophical divide. The players are negotiating for momentum. The owners are negotiating from caution, and both sides can justify their positions with data. There is also the broader macroeconomic reality. Professional sports leagues rely heavily on long-term media contracts, local broadcasting rights, sponsorship agreements, and ticket pricing elasticity. The WNBA's recent growth is promising, but its national media deal does not yet resemble the scale of the NBA's multi-billion-dollar broadcast packages. Local television infrastructure in many markets remains limited. Corporate partnership depth varies dramatically by city. This matters because gross revenue percentages sound clean in theory, but they scale unpredictably when the underlying revenue streams fluctuate. Then there is expansion. The addition of franchises in Toronto and Portland signals confidence in growth. Expansion fees inject capital into the league, but expansion also introduces new operational costs, front office build-outs, facility investments, and roster construction expenses. Those are upfront burdens before long-term profitability can even be assessed. From a purely business standpoint, locking into aggressive revenue splits while simultaneously expanding can amplify financial strain if projections miss. On the other hand, from a labor standpoint, expansion demonstrates belief in the product. If ownership is confident enough to expand, players can reasonably argue that they deserve a stronger share of the upside. This is the tension point. It is also important to address the broader cultural narrative surrounding this dispute. Public perception matters enormously in labor conflicts. Fans often side with players when they believe athletes are underpaid relative to league profits. Conversely, fans may grow frustrated if they perceive demands as disconnected from financial reality. The WNBA's current fan base includes a large influx of new viewers who entered through the recent visibility boom. Many of those fans are still forming their long-term relationship with the league. A prolonged labor dispute risks interrupting that connection before it fully stabilizes. History shows that canceled seasons can permanently alter league trajectories. Major League Baseball's 1994 strike took years to recover from in terms of public trust. The NBA's lockouts temporarily disrupted momentum, but occurred within already established billion-dollar ecosystems. The WNBA does not yet have that same cushion. This is why the timing is so sensitive. The league has momentum, but it does not yet have insulation. Mark Cuban's proposal about expanded sponsorship structures highlights something deeper. The WNBA may need innovation rather than replication. Copying the NBA's labor model without replicating the NBA's revenue base creates friction. The college NIL comparison further complicates matters because it shifts leverage toward players entering the league. If elite prospects can earn comparable or greater income in college through NIL collectives, the professional league must become financially competitive or risk talent hesitation. That reality shifts bargaining power subtly toward labor in the long term. But innovation requires collective bargaining flexibility. Any structural change, sponsorship pools, revenue sharing adjustments, cap modifications, must be codified in the CBA, and that requires trust between parties. Right now, trust appears strained. Public ultimatums, leaked financial projections, and aggressive messaging from both sides rarely accelerate compromise. Instead, they harden positions. The longer negotiations drag, the more public narratives calcify. And narrative matters because sports economics are not purely mathematical, they are psychological. Investor confidence, sponsor confidence, and fan engagement all respond to perception. If corporate sponsors sense instability, they may hesitate to sign multi-year deals at premium valuations. If broadcasters sense uncertainty, they may structure contracts conservatively. If fans sense dysfunction, they may reach